In this video, we'll be covering every piece of treasure we can get from Koresh, and these can be found both in and out of phase diving. Now before we start, to keep things simple and proper, I'll be sweeping Koresh from subzone to subzone. So for example, I'll be calling this Tazavesh Isle, and I'll be covering all the treasures inside and outside of phase diving that we can find here, and we'll follow this format until we end at Shadow Point. Our first treasure will be outside of phase diving, and this treasure will be called the Mailroom Distribution, which requires us to interact with this mailroom item just outside, and then we'll want to enter inside of the mailroom. Once we're inside, we'll be able to see these swirlies on the ground, so we'll want to walk over to each of them, and then an extra action button shows up. We'll do this about 4 more times, and then we'll be able to pick up the treasure itself called the Mailroom Distribution, which will be a Hearthstone toy. Now for the next 3 treasures in Tazavesh Isle, we'll need to enter phase diving. Now take note that these treasures can only be found once we have our Reshi wraps at rank 4, which will unlock the perk that allows us to see these treasures. To upgrade our cloak, we'll need about 3 ethereal strands, which we can earn weekly from doing the archival assault delve in Koresh, or from completing the weekly warrant quest we can pick up from this constable in Tazavesh, or we can even have a chance of looting these from the season 3 dungeons and raid bosses, and finally we have a chance of getting these from winning PvP matches when season 3 begins. So in total, we'll need about 9 strands to get to upgrade to rank 4, since just by completing the campaign we'll get 3, which will allow us to upgrade our cloak to rank 1. Now as a footnote, since we can't fly while phase diving, I'd suggest having either a goblin glider kit or picking yourself up one of the untethered Zaibucha, since some of these phase diving treasures are in hard to reach places like isolated small islands far away from the main ones. So either grab yourself these 2 items or just one of them, or get ready to roll up and level up classes or races that have built-in skills that allow you to either glide or slow your descent like a priest or a mage or, a demon hunter. Finally, be sure to grab yourself the phase regulator to help you get out of phase diving without the need of using a phase conduit or going back to one, in order to be able to just exit and then use your flying mount. So back onto the treasures, the next one will be inside of the mailroom. So we'll go to the nearby phase conduit and then head back inside of that mailroom. Inside of it will be the next treasure called the Postmaster's Prototype Parcel and Postage Presser, and this will be a transmog or a cosmetic item for a wand. So we'll go inside and find it at the very back end of the room. Our next treasure will be the Spear of the Fallen Memories, which will give us another transmog appearance, but this time it'll be a polearm. So from the mailroom, we'll exit out of it and make our way to the northern part of Tazavesh for jumping down. Now to survive the fall, either pop a defensive cooldown, or if you're mage or priest, use levitate or slow fall accordingly. Personally, I used a demon hunter to get this one as well as the others, since I can just double jump and glide anyways, it's built in. Once down, we'll head to this graveyard area and find the spear embedded onto this pillar. Now for our last treasure in Tazavesh, it'll be called the Bladed Rifle, which will be located here on this small island towards the right side of Tazavesh. Now since we can't use flying mounts in phase diving, and we can't use flying mounts to get to this island, we'll need to have that glider kit or have a class or race that can glide or slow fall in order to reach that island. Once we do get on that island, we'll find the item just here near the edge, and then we'll use our phase regulator to get out of phase diving and be able to fly out and get out of the island. Next up, we'll now be heading to Primus Island. The first treasure here is going to be called the Lightly-Dented Luggate. This is going to be found just by the flight point of Hossa's Rest, and it'll be on this boat docked by the pier. Now for our next treasure, it's going to be called the Abandoned Lockbox. Now during PTR, this had several or 4 potential spawn locations. Now I'll be showing all of the potential ones or spawn locations on the map right now, so you'll just have to fly about each of those and hopefully find it. If you don't find it in any of the coordinates, do another lap, do another route until you eventually do find the Abandoned Lockbox. Now for the next 3 treasures on this island, we'll need to be inside of phase diving. Thankfully, all of them will be on the main island, so we don't need to do any extreme jumping or gliding to get to those small islands. Now our first phase diving treasure for the zone will be called the Ethereal Voidforged container, which we can find here at the ruins of Yathorn on top of this pillar. or this platform by this broken down wall. To get here is kinda tricky, and personally, to skip the puzzle or the jumping puzzle, I use the Demon Hunter to platform all the way to the top and get the treasure. But if you do find a better way or an alternative way to get this treasure without using a Demon Hunter or any of those classes that give you like a double jump or a glide, do let us know in the comments down below. Our next treasure will be called the Tulwar of the Golden Guard, which is relatively nearby from the last treasure. We'll find it hanging off of the backside of this carriage found here, and this is going to be a sword. As for the last treasure on Primus Isle, it'll be the light-soaked Cleaver. Now we'll find this at the northern part of the subzone here in Primus Isle, and it'll be sort of blending in with this void machinery thing located here, so we'll be able to find the axe just underneath. Now we'll be moving on to the Oasis Isle subzone, which will have the most amount of treasures in Koresh, so get ready. The first treasure we'll talk about will be the Tumbled Package, which we'll find just by this lonely island on the southern part of the subzone. Since we don't have to be phase diving to get there, it's relatively easy to just fly there, pick it up, and then be on about our merry way. Our next treasure will be called the Forlorn Wind Chime, which we'll find in the ruins of Ecodome Ravan. Now the treasure itself will be hanging off of this tree, and opening it or looting it won't give us any cosmetic. Instead, it will give us one of these crystal fragments, which is going to be a buff item that gives a primary stat boost by 5% for about 1 hour. The next treasure is going to be called the Shattered Crystals, and this is found just towards the west part over by the mountains where we found the previous treasure. We'll just have to fly up there and get on this small platform area, and upon looting we'll get another crystal fragment. The next treasure up will be called Rashaal's Vase, and in order to find it, we'll need to go inside of this cave located in Lunal River. On the map right now is the marked location for the cave entrance. So once inside, we'll want to head all the way to the back and find the vase sort of dug into this rock platform next to this mob. For the next treasure, this is going to be a bit of a mini puzzle, and at the end, we'll even get a battle pet as an additional reward. To start things off, we'll first need to pick up the battered book located here. It'll be by the ground next to this fallen caravan. Next up, we'll need to pick up the submerged bottle, which will be on the northeast part of Ecodome Oasis. It'll be by the waterfall like pool area. We'll be able to see a purple outline since we do have the battered book in our bags. Now once we have the submerged bottle, we'll keep that in our bags as well, and now we'll be able to head to this area by this ruined tower, and in here we'll be able to fly up to the second or third platform area where there's like this platform ledge, and in here we'll be able to interact with the ancient coffer. Now upon opening this, it will check off this treasure off the list, as well as reward us with a battle pet called Mr. Longlegs. The next treasure up will be called Ixthar's Favorite Crystal, which we'll be able to find by the Tempest Fields. Now this is going to be near a rare mob, and upon looting, we'll get more crystal fragments like before. We'll be able to get more crystal fragments. For the next treasure, it's straightforward. It'll be called the Wastelander Stash, located near Castigar. It'll be inside of this cave, so we'll just fly to this encampment. But if you've already finished the campaign and you're at chapter 4, the enemies here will be hostile instead of neutral, so keep that in mind. The next treasure up will be called the Gift of the Brothers. This will be another mini puzzle, but it'll be a simpler one. First off, we'll need to head to this location shown on the map right now. In here, we'll see this small lantern, and upon interacting, we'll get a 15-minute buff, and during this time we'll now start seeing these ghosts or these apparitions. The ghost in front of us where we picked up the lantern will tell us that we'll need to reunite the 4 of them, so what we'll want to do is head to these 3 locations and talk to the wandering ghost there, interacting and then choosing the prompt to tell them that their brother is looking for them. Once we've spoken to all 3, we'll head back to where we interacted with the lantern, and upon completion we'll get the brother's final gift, which is going to be a held offhand cosmetic item. Now for our last treasure in this area, this will be called the Skeletal Tailbones. We'll find this just northeast of the Ecodome, and it'll be on this slight incline area. Upon looting, we'll get Ixthar the Observling, which is going to be a battle pet. Now we will be moving on to phase diving for the Oasis Isle, and in this subzone we'll be able to get 4 treasures. The first one up we'll talk about is going to be Efrat's Forgotten Bulwark. This is going to be a shield cosmetic. To get to it, we'll use the phase conduit near North Sufaadi, and just in front is going to be this bridge. Directly underneath it is our first treasure. Now as for our next treasure, we'll head inside of the ruins of North Sufaadi and go to this small dock area where there's the skiff or boat like parked nearby. nearby. From this, we'll find the next treasure called the Sufaadi Skiff Lantern, which will be another held offhand cosmetic item. Getting onto the boat may be a bit tricky, so I'd advise a mobile class that can either boost their movement speed and jump across, or just use a goblin glider or the potion I mentioned earlier. Now, as for our third treasure, we'll want to head south until we see this floating island. From here, we'll get the branch of Janaa, which will be a cosmetic staff. Now, to get to the island, we'll definitely need that glider kit or the potion, but if you do have a class or race with a built-in glide, it'll be relatively easy to get here. Once we fly down to that island and pick up the item, we'll use our phase regulator to get out of phase diving and be able to mount up and fly out of there. For our last treasure in this area, we want to fly over to the Tempest Fields and re-enter phase diving from there. Nearby is going to be a treasure called Korgorath's Talon, and this will be a dagger cosmetic. Now, we'll be able to find the dagger sort of hidden away in this divot or corner between these jagged spires or rocks. Now, before we move on to Shadowpoint Isle, there's actually going to be 2 more items we can get from these small floating islands, or the ones in between, the main ones. The first one we'll talk about is going to be the crudely stitched sack found here between Shadowpoint and the Oasis subzone. And this doesn't need us to be phase diving, so we can just fly right up there and then loot the item. Now, from this, we'll be able to get the Tazavesh Lookout's Mace, which is going to be a cosmetic item for one-handed mace. As for the last treasure found between the subzones, it'll be the phase blade of the Void Marches. Now, this will be found near this questing area during the campaign, but we'll have to be phase diving in order to be able to see it. So we'll head to the overlook and enter phase diving there, and then we'll just run along the edges of the island until we find the phase blade, which will be a one-handed sword, as well as be a part of another achievement called We've All Got Swords. Now, on to our last subzone of Koresh. This will be Shadowpoint Isle. While non-phase diving, we'll be able to get the Sandborn Coffer. This will be on the rock platforms just over here, and from this we'll be able to get a 2-handed staff cosmetic item. As for the last 2 treasures on the list, they'll both be found only while phase diving. The first one up is going to be the Warglaive of the Audacious Hunter, and this will be found inside of this cave by the Fracture of Lasuna. To find the glaives, we'll enter the cave and we'll see it on top of this elevated rock platform, and from this treasure we'll get a Warglaive cosmetic. For the last treasure on this list, it'll be the Shadowguard Crusher. This will be a one-handed mace cosmetic, and we'll find it inside one of the Torment Manaforge buildings just northeast from Shadowpoint itself. But that's about it for the video. If you found it informative, do leave a like and subscribe, since it'll help keep the mics and the lights on. Thank you very much for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.